My name's Mark Williamson, and you're here for another live Action for Happiness event. It's great to see so many of you joining from all around the world. We're talking today about creating happier workplaces. So many of us spend our time at work, and yet not much of that time is as fulfilling and meaningful and happy as it could be. And today I'm delighted we're joined by a sort of a hero of mine in many ways around happy workplaces, someone who's been talking about this topic and inspiring me about the idea of well-being, joy, and happiness at work for over a decade now. Henry Stewart, it's lovely to have you with us, Henry.
Thank you. Thank you.
So if you're new to one of these live events, thank you for joining. Welcome to the Action for Happiness community. This is an amazing movement of people from all around the world trying to build a happier, kinder way of being, a sort of shift in our culture towards a more positive way of being in our lives, but also in our workplaces. If you're a regular, thanks for being here and coming back. Let's keep it friendly and kind and relevant in the chat. As always, we're delighted to have you sharing ideas with each other. And there'll also be a few things that we'll get you to do along the way. And we'll have some chance for you to ask Henry questions a bit later in the event. Henry, you have been talking and working on this theme of today's event, creating happier workplaces, for many years.
Absolutely.
I wondered that before we dive into that, which I'm really excited to do, maybe you could say a little bit about your own journey to this. Why does this topic matter to you, and how did you end up being an expert in this?
Well, I started Happy 36 years ago, when really a happy workplace wasn't a thing. And it was then I started as Happy Computers. The reason I started Happy was because I used to work for a really dreadful workplace. In fact, the book of it was called Disaster, which it was a newspaper called The News on Sunday. And so I wanted to know how to create a workplace that was truly happy, that delighted the customer, and that was very fulfilling. And I hope that I've done that.
Yes, well, we'll have a chance maybe a bit later on to talk about the work that your organisation does around training and supporting organisations to not only learn in a conventional way, but actually change their whole culture around these ideas. But I think, although this audience, I'm sure everyone here has an sort of intrinsic interest in happiness because of the nature of these events and the organisation Action for Happiness, I think it's worth reminding ourselves of why this is even worth talking about. Because I think a conventional story, certainly one that you and I were encountering many years ago, is that there's good work and getting stuff done and being productive, and then there's a sort of soft happiness type stuff over here, and they didn't really relate to each other in any way. And in fact, if you focus too much on helping people feel good, then you might undermine the important stuff. Is that true?
No, it's absolutely not true. People work best when they feel good about themselves. And the research is clear. There was a Harvard Business Review magazine that said that happy workplaces lead to 37% increase in sales, 31% increase in productivity, and a 300% growth in creativity. There's been a research from the King's Fund on the NHS, which looked at engagement in hospitals, and it found that if staff were engaged, then patients were engaged. But it also found that where staff weren't engaged, more patients died. So in fact, for happy engaged hospitals, there was 97 on the mortality index, and for disengaged hospitals, it was 103. And that means 5,000 people die in unhappy hospitals, or what I like to say, 5,000 people 5,000 people get well in better hospitals.
That's fascinating. I hadn't heard that stat. I'm very familiar with the idea that happier employees and teams are more productive, they're more faithful to the organization, they get on better, almost everything we value individually and collectively goes better. But I hadn't heard that it was actually a matter of life or death in that example. So that's incredible. I should say that my colleague that many people here will know, Vanessa King, has been doing great work, like you have, Henry, with organizations for many years on the importance of this. And I think particularly as we look into a sort of changing wider society and economic context and uncertainty, people and leaders are looking for ways to support their staff and to help create this culture. But today in this event, I want us not only to talk about the leadership side, which I know you do a lot of work on, but also to look at what we can all do. Because whether our work is homemaking or being a head of looking after the admin for the team, whatever it might be, even if we're not the leader, I believe that there are things we can do. So
absolutely. Yeah,
exploring that with you. But could we start with some of your, well, actually, why don't we start with asking this lovely audience we have with us? Because as you know, Henry, because you've been a supporter of what we're doing for many years, you've seen how engaged the Action for Happiness community is.
Yeah.
A question I think I've heard you ask before is just simply, what is it that makes you joyful or happy at work? Is that a good question to ask people? Should we try that?
Let's ask that.
Okay, so wherever you are in the world right now, maybe take a moment to answer this question that I've seen Henry ask so many people. What is it that contributes to you feeling good about what you're doing in a work context? And what I'll do is I'll read a few of these out, and then maybe, Henry, we can see what the common themes are. So being seen, feeling respected, recognition, feeling energized, valued, appreciated, feeling useful, creativity, autonomy, flexibility, feeling engaged, completing tasks, having agency, collaboration and teamwork, support, great colleagues, feeling appreciated, part of a team, open communication. Wow, this is sounding like music to your ears, maybe.
It is music to my ears, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Tell me what you would normally say to that quote. What have you found in your work that people really find is most important for this idea of
let me ask your people something. Let me ask when have you had really great outcomes in your work? Hopefully you've got lots of them, but this one example where you've had really great outcomes. And let me ask you some questions on that.
Okay, well, why don't I be a guinea pig for this then, while everyone else can play along while listening? So I'm going to think of an example in my life. It might even be an Action for Happiness, hopefully, where I felt that my work has gone well.
Yes.
Okay, then you're going to ask us all some questions. Okay, let's do this.
Okay, so did you have a high salary for that?
Not particularly. That wasn't a major reason for it feeling.
Did you have good communication from your manager? Actually.
Yes, generally, but not always.
Okay. Were you challenged?
Yes.
Yeah. And did you have a culture of trust and freedom where you made your own decisions?
Absolutely. And in fact, that feels like, in many ways, the one that's most standing out for me. And I think I saw it in the chat, that feeling of
autonomy, trust, all that kind of thing. Yeah. Absolutely. What I generally find with that is that there's only about 5% are well paid. 33% have good communication with the manager. 80% are challenged, but nearly everybody has where they have these great outcomes, have a sense of trust and freedom where they make their own decisions.
Wow. That's really consistent across different groups, is it?
Consistent across from chief execs to frontline staff to charities to finance people, all sorts of stuff. But let me give you
really profound to me, Henry, the idea that so many organizations probably don't provide that sense of trust and autonomy. I get the impression that lots of cultures are kind of micromanaging and controlling and not giving people freedom. So maybe we're getting it wrong, do you think?
Well, maybe we are. Well, let me also ask the audience some questions. Do you like to be told what to do, have complete freedom, or freedom within guidelines? So, number one, do you like to be told what to do? Put it in chat.
Well, why don't we write whatever answer to you? Okay, people just say no.
Or number two, do you like complete freedom? Number three, do you like freedom within guidelines?
I'm seeing a lot of number threes.
A lot of number threes.
And a lot of freedom within guidelines. Yeah. So what's going on there?
Very few number ones.
It's not complete freedom. It's sort of constrained freedom. Is that right?
Exactly. I mean, there are a few number twos who, they probably would like to be entrepreneurs, I would say, a bit of anarchy. But yeah, that's very much what I find. 90% of people like freedom within guidelines. And shall I give you an example of that?
Yeah, please.
This is one from the Happy Manifesto, which is the Happy Manifesto. Remember, we did a session on that about 13 years ago at the Cass Business School.
Yeah, we helped launch that book then. And of course, today, I forgot to mention earlier, you're launching another new book. So
exactly.
Be,
yes.
Marking that occasion with you. But say a bit more about that original book. Yeah, what were you going to say?
Yeah. So the Happy Manifesto has a whole bunch of stuff in it. It has 10 clear guidelines, and from that book, a lot of leaders have used those ideas of trust and freedom. But the idea of freedom within guidelines. So we had a cafe manager who was 19 years old and wanted to improve the cafe. And what we didn't do was say, give us a proposal and we'll think about it, or we didn't come up with a committee. What we did do was agree a budget to her and that she understood the values of the organization. Okay. And I saw it for the first time when she'd created it. But how do you think she felt? Look at 3 months into her first job, 19 years old, looking at her cafe. To put a bit to tell us a little bit about how you felt she might find that in.
This is someone who's really been given a huge amount of autonomy to create something. It sounds like. So let's see. So proud, empowered, excited, nervous, overwhelmed, trusted. Yeah.
Yeah. And let me give you another example.
Well, how close was that? Were people on the right lines there? How did she really feel?
She felt proud. She felt absolutely proud. I did. There are a few people there feeling scared and overwhelmed, but yeah. Excited, but also scared a bit. Well, let me give you another story of somebody who designed our website. And the key there is freedom within guidelines. So we had the branding exercise clear. We did the metrics, how many people how many viewers they were, and how much income it generated. We ensured that they talk to the clients. That's part of the guidelines, that they talk to the clients. And when I saw that website the time before it was launched, I didn't really like it. I thought, what's this about? But it was completely within the guidelines. And when we got the metrics a month or two later, the viewers had gone up threefold and the income had gone up twofold, even without the benefit of my expertise.
So actually you took the brave decision to trust people and trust their judgment within those guidelines. And actually the fact that you didn't get involved and micromanage actually ended up with a better result by the metrics than if you'd got involved and given your views because you trusted them. And that's actually it takes courage from a leader's perspective to actually believe in the goodness of people and the talent that you have around you.
Yeah, and absolutely. But that's what I would ask people to say to their managers. Give me freedom within guidelines. Now, the guidelines might be a budget. It might be you talk to other people. It might be something like, it might be the metrics. It might be something like that. But if you have someone who is maybe a micromanager or something like that, ask them, say, can you give me freedom within guidelines? Because the guidelines, it's not complete freedom. The guidelines are there, to work within.
So why don't we move from this to another thing I've heard you talk about, which is very much related, but it's about this idea of being a good manager. So whether we are managers ourselves or whether in fact we're working for other people, I think quite a few of us will have experience of what you might call a bad boss or a good boss. And
Yes.
so rather than getting too hung up on the characteristics of an unhelpful person to work for, should we maybe see if we can find out more from the audience about what what might contribute to being a good boss?
Yeah, what makes a good boss? Yeah.
Yeah. So the question is, what makes a good manager, folks? Let's see what comes up. What do you find really you appreciate when you're working for someone? So trust is coming up,
Trust,
listening, caring, consistency,
listening.
that's important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Honesty, being heard, realistic, approachable, patient, transparent, energized, good role model. I really like that. Give and take. They don't tell you what to do.
Mhm.
Organized, genuine, a coach. That's an interesting word I've heard you using as well, being a good coaching manager. Yeah, I really like this list. Did you see anything else that struck you there?
Now, there's transparency, there is listening, definitely, definitely. They want to hear your opinions first. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what have you found that? I mean, I've heard this statistic where or there's a phrase that says people join organizations, but they leave bosses. And very
Yes.
often, what causes unhappiness at work is those direct relationships that actually become really, I don't want to use that word toxic, but they can become unhealthy, should we say. What have you seen in your work with organizations about the importance of good working relationships between people?
Well, yes. I mean, there's been a survey by the CMI that found that employees would take a pay cut. Well, 48% of employees would take a pay cut to lose their manager, um, which is rather unnerving, which means that they are 48% of people who have possibly toxic managers. Um, Sorry, remind me what your question
Well,
was.
no, that. I mean, I think that shows the fact that this is a quite widespread problem. I guess the converse is true, which is those of us who are lucky enough to work for these good managers that have these characteristics that
Yeah,
the people have put in the chat here, I guess are going to feel more likely to want to be there, more appreciated, more
yeah.
energized, I guess. So it sort of seems crazy that well, if you care about whatever organization you work in, it would seem that helping people feel good much should be really the top priority, shouldn't
It
it?
should be absolutely the top priority. And Google did an interesting piece of research on what were the most important behaviors of managers. And it came up with communication, listening to your people, but the most important behavior was coaching,
Okay.
being a good coach. And that is what managers should do. I mean, have you ever had a coach?
Yes, I have multiple times, both in a work context and also separately. I'm a huge believer in coaching and therapy, and a lot of my biggest life changes have come out of good coaching experiences, actually.
And what do they do for you?
They asked insightful questions and then listened and allowed me to work out the answers for myself. So they didn't tell me the answers, but they asked the question that helped me
Uh-huh.
see the insight that I was hiding in plain sight almost.
Right. So they helped you find your own solution.
Yes, that's exactly it.
And that's exactly what managers should do. Managers should build your confidence, ask questions, and help you find your own solution. And that's what we do at Happy. That's what managers do at Happy. So let me ask let me ask the audience a question. That if your manager says to you, I need to see you at 2 p.m., do you feel excited? Um,
It depends on what my relationship with that manager is like, and also what the
a
context
lot of
is.
people say no, but
There's
there's
a
someone
lot of
saying
people
yes.
here
It's
saying they're
great.
scared. Look, what Liz has just said very honestly, my stomach flips. We kind of assume the worst, don't we? Often. Thank you for being
Absolutely,
honest.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Whereas the manager should support you, the manager should listen to you, the manager should coach you. That so there's a no, I feel dread. It's not
Yeah,
good.
Laura saying, I figure I must have done something wrong. So, I mean, actually, the manager could have said the same thing, which is, I'd love to talk to you, about this topic. Don't worry, it's just a catch up. How does
Yeah.
2 o'clock sound? You could have said the same thing without creating that that uncertainty.
Whereas Matthias says, I feel valued. That's, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, as
Well, I
Tuesday
mean,
said, at
this
2
is the
p.m.
other
it
thing
might
I learned.
happen. But
Sorry,
yeah.
I was going to the other thing I learned in management was that, of course, part of good leadership is adapting your style to the individuals that you're with, because actually people do have different preferences and needs, and some people like a bit more direction, some people like a little bit more autonomy, and actually, I found that when I started putting, I have to say, lots of your ideas have been really helpful to me in helping to build Action for Happiness and the team we have here, and yet sometimes I find if I've given loads and loads of autonomy, but not enough of the guidance, people have
Yes.
felt a bit sort of lost.
Yes,
And if
absolutely.
and so there's a careful balance you need to find that you can adapt for different people and personality types and so on.
Yeah. But that's an interesting point, because the golden rule says you should treat people as you would want to be treated.
Mm.
But I think that's not necessarily true for managers. The platinum rule says you should treat people as they would want to be
Oh, I
treated.
love that. Instead of treating them the way you want to be treated, it's treating them the way they want to be treated. Of
Exactly.
course. Yeah,
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's a very good insight. So before we move on to sort of what we can all do as individuals, let's just focus a little bit more on the culture and managers. And one of the things that links to this for me, again, I've heard you talking before about mistakes. And of course, we all make mistakes, and every organization has things that go wrong. How do organizations often do this? And what would you recommend they do instead?
Well, what I believe is people should celebrate mistakes, and that's a
Right.
key. That's one of the principles in the Happy Manifesto, and it's also the principle in the new book, Creating Joy at Work, which is 501 ideas for creating happy workplaces. Can I tell you a story about a
Please.
mistake? So there's a company called Huntsman in Middlesbrough, which is a chemical company, and they used to have on the wall a red button, which, if discharged, would if pushed, would discharge the chemicals into the river. Okay. And then a scaffolder came along and pressed this button. And the scaffolding company sacked him. But Huntsman said, no, 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 re-employ him, send him back to work for us, and and they had a tea party to thank him.
Huh?
And that was partly because nobody could see that he'd pressed this button, but he went into the control room and said that I've pushed this button. There's a red light on, and as a result, they could do it within 20 minutes instead of 24 hours. There was very little environmental damage and no fine, because the problem is not the mistake; it's the cover-up. Yeah. So if somebody comes to me and says, I've done something wrong with our biggest customer, if they come at the moment, then I can do that. I can talk to the customer and do that. But if they come 2 weeks later, it might be a problem.
Okay, so the lesson here is don't hide mistakes away. Get them out in the open as early as possible, and actually use them as an opportunity to learn. I guess that's really what
use this as an opportunity to learn. So there's a company called Nixon McKenna's which had a church of fail every month, and they would come to the church of fail and celebrate their best mistakes to wild applause. And actually, we did. Some of our clients do that.
I love the church of fail, and of course it makes it. I mean, you don't want to start incentivizing failure, but it certainly incentivizes honesty, which is really
Absolutely. And I
yeah.
know that at Happy, I know that because we have the culture of celebrating mistakes, that's one of our key values. That if people try something, do something different, do something, and if it all goes wrong, they know that we will celebrate that mistake.
So actually, you encourage creativity and a bit of taking initiative, really, without the fear that goes with it.
Let's put something in. Let's ask in the chat if people do celebrate mistakes, or if people have difficult relationship with mistakes?
Okay, well, I'm seeing a mix actually. Some people talking about how they do celebrate them both personally
Yeah,
and
yeah.
in the culture, but others sort of no, some in the middle. But Linda's making a good point that she doesn't like them because they make her feel bad. And of course, one of the reasons we shy away from mistakes is a bit of the impact it has on our own self-worth and the fact that we don't like to admit our vulnerability sometimes. And I think
Absolutely.
just in a workplace context, but something that we've talked about a lot with Action for Happiness is the power of being vulnerable and true and authentic and just sort of saying, okay, I messed that up and I'm sorry. But this is why, and this is what we can do about it. It seems really brave. I think is another word I saw someone sharing.
Yeah. But actually, they're talking about their own mistakes.
Mm.
What would your organization say about your mistakes? What would they?
Mm. Well, fear of reprisals, blame is what
Yeah.
I'm saying here. Yeah, a teachable moment. Well, that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So I think again a bit of a mixture. Thank you, folks. It's really great to have such an engaged audience here, and we'll share this
Blame
chat
and
as well as the
shame.
video. What was that?
Blame and shame was one of them.
Yeah, well, I think it sounds like you wouldn't be an advocate of blame and shame. Um,
Absolutely not.
so okay, we've talked about trust. We've talked about the kind of importance of creating a happier culture. We've talked about mistakes. Another phrase I heard you use is liberating structures.
Yeah.
Is that linking back to this idea of freedom, or is there something we can do in a practical sense to help people feel liberated, I guess, to talk about mistakes, to make their own choices? How do we make that wired into a culture?
Okay. So there was again an interesting study by Google about Project Aristotle, which is where they wanted to work out which teams were great. Okay, and they wondered whether it was because they were great friends or whether they were introverts or extroverts or whatever. But actually, what they found was two things. One, an equal voice for people, so that people in meetings had an equal voice. And secondly, ostentatious, I think it is ostentatious listening. So the idea there would be that, if you're listening to somebody, maybe you close the laptop, and talk to them, and listen to them or whatever. So two things: an equal share of voice and ostentatious listening. And the idea of liberating structures is do you ever go to a meeting where one or two people dominate?
Oh yes, I'm
Yes.
very familiar with that idea.
Yes. Is that something for the chat? The hippo effect. Yes. Do you know what the hippo effect is?
Well, I'm seeing lots of yeses, but no, please tell me what's the hippo effect?
Hippo effect is the highest. What is it? Oh God, I've forgotten it now. The highest income, the highest income person. Yeah. So the idea of the hippo effect is that
Oh, it's the highest paid person's opinion. Is that what it
highest
is?
paid person's opinion. Yes,
Yeah,
highest
yeah.
paid person's opinion. And the idea of the hippo is that that the highest paid person is normally the person who has the most impact, right? But actually, it's the frontline staff who should have the most impact because they're the people who talk to the customer, who talk to the client, who talk to whoever. So anyway, liberating structures is a way of giving people an equal voice, right? There's 34 liberating structures. Let me give you one example: 1, 2, for all. So in 1, 2, for all, you have one where and this it could be in any meeting, in any event, in anything like this. So in 1, 2, for all, you have 1 moment of reflection, 1 minute of reflection, okay, on whatever the topic is. Then you have 2 minutes in pairs. Then you have 4 minutes in fours, and then you come back together. And the result of that is that everybody has been able to speak. Everybody, and so and it's only 7 minutes, 7 minutes, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 4 minutes. And there's a whole range of these liberating structures that there's 34 of them.
That's amazing, actually. I really like that model, because we've certainly found in our work that the more you can allow everyone to have had a chance to just share their thoughts and articulate them to even just to one other person, they just feel so much more engaged than when they're listening to others. I love the hippo thing. I've not actually come across that before. Okay, thank you. So before we move on to questions, and so please do use the questions function to ask your own questions to Henry. I'd like to talk a bit about, we'd all love to work in those cultures with trust, with these good bosses, with celebration of mistakes, with everyone having an equal voice. But we can't always control what's happening. Some of us have a bad boss. Some of us have a culture that is scared of mistakes or doesn't allow us freedom to choose. And yet I think you and I both believe that our actions can still make a difference. I've certainly seen it in my own working life. What is it that you could suggest that anyone here with this event today could do to help make their own working life a bit brighter, a bit more joyful?
Well, there's a whole range of things. You could first of all, simply say thank you, show appreciation, show care for others. There's something from Henry James which says, here it is. This is in the book, The Creating Joy at Work. 3 things in human life are important. The first is to be kind. The second is to be kind. The third is to be kind. So even with, you can. I mean, you've had an example of, was it Sophia who?
Yes, I told you a story, didn't I, Henry, about a department I was running back in a sort of corporate world, and Sophia, it was, who joined the team and brought in a kind of an upbeat, friendly nature and a sense of camaraderie and getting to know people and really caring for others and enjoying enthusiasm. And actually, the role she'd been given was in an organization that didn't really value that role. It was a frontline role, but it wasn't one that the management hierarchy thought was important. And yet I would say that she had a bigger positive impact on what we achieved as a department than I did as the head of that department, and it was a huge wake up for me that here is someone with a warm heart and a sense of friendship and sort of interest in people that just makes people feel valued. And that had just this amazing effect. It was like a genuine ripple effect across multiple people for a long period of time.
Yes, and that, because everybody can help people to feel good about themselves. Yeah, everybody can help people to believe the best. Everybody can help people to, you can smile, you can say thank you, you can do all these kinds of things. But yeah, so absolutely, that's what helps people.
Well, so you mentioned your new book. I think it's 501 ideas, did you say, for
501 plus ideas?
Okay, so there's more than. So, and I think you're very kindly, as well as there being a sort of an Amazon version of the official book that people can get, or an online version that people can get, you've also got a downloadable version, and your previous book is also available. So we'll send links to those things tomorrow if people would like to find out and share it, because I guess both of us want these ideas to go far and wide.
Absolutely.
But before we leave that, another aspect that comes up a lot in positive psychology that we work on, but I think feels relevant to your work in organizations, is about strengths. Back to this idea that we're all a bit different. How do we play to our strengths, I guess, is the question. What does that mean?
Well, it's interesting because Gallup did a survey finding that of over 1 million people, asking people if they got to do what they did best at work. Yeah. Now, in the UK, there's different ones for other areas. Guess what percentage said that they did what they did best at work every day? What percentage?
Oh gosh.
In chat. Put it in chat.
Yeah, I'd imagine it might be a worryingly low percent. Okay, I'm seeing 15, 20, 40. Yeah, 50 is the highest I think I've seen so far.
Yes, that is, isn't that crazy? People think, that you never get to do what you do best at work, and absolutely it's true. So only 17%, 1 in 6 said they got to do what they did best at work every day. But what Gallup found was that 30 to 40%, that they were 30 to 40% more productive when they did get to do what they were best at each day. So what we do at Happy is we have a job description, but then we throw it away and work out what their talents are. So you talk about what you love doing, what makes you really motivated, what helps you with that, and you can do that with your team. So with the Happy team, we are probably every 6 months we put up on a post-it every single one of the roles that they do, and then they work out who should do the next one, who should do the next the new roles. Yeah.
I think there's lots of people here presumably thinking they'd love to work in your culture right now, Henry. But that feels to me like a really profound and quite sad point, in that there's so much amazing human potential that when we do the things that we are motivated by and best at, we feel really good and we get really excited.
Absolutely.
And yet, so few of us, across the nation, across the world, are actually having that opportunity, and it seems like such a missed opportunity. So that's obviously a huge chance for leaders here to help play to the strengths of their people and look at, as you've given an example, find out what motivates people. But I guess, yeah, go on, after you. Please.
But it's also if you're part of a team, you can work with that team to work out who the strength, which is your strength, which is our strength, which is your strength. Absolutely.
And for anyone who doesn't know, there are tools you can use to find your strengths and work out your strength is being creative or being a listener and so on. So actually, I find that when I did that and then thinking, how can I use that more? You're sort of encouraging us all to be a bit more aware of what we love to do and try and bring more of that to our working lives.
Yeah, and there's a book called Strength Finder 2.0, which has a code in the back. And so it's only about 20 quid. And what we do is that enables your 5 best strengths. Okay. And we've put that on our organizational chart. We've put the 5, what everyone's 5 best strengths are on the organizational chart. So I'm just talking about, what are these tools?
Yeah, so when you've mentioned one was the Strengths Finder, I would also say that in a more general sense, there's something called the VIA Character Strength Survey, which is freely available. And you just have to register and do that, and that takes you through a process. And
that's in the link there.
Yeah. Great. Okay, so people, if you would like to ask Henry a question, please do use the Q&A function. And if you see a question you like, please give it a thumbs up so we can come to the most voted for questions. And the first one I wanted to bring up here is from Jackie. And it comes back to something that's really changed in our working lives since COVID, particularly about working from home and virtual working. What would you recommend to an organization where staff are not happy working from home and are asking for accommodations to do with that? I'm sorry, the question's just gone off my screen, but I guess some work can cause mental health related challenges around anxiety. Okay. And there's this balance, I think, of working from home or being together. How are you seeing that in this post-COVID world around the togetherness versus flexibility and balancing our needs?
Well, that's an interesting question from Jackie. I would presume that most leaders in companies do want people to come back to the office, or some of them do anyway. And I was wondering whether I've lost the question now. But I would say that she should chat to the leaders and get some help with that, and you maybe move back to the office. Because if it's causing anxiety,
well, certainly I've seen much more willingness and openness to talk about anxiety and other mental health related topics in workplaces than when we first started doing this. I mean, people are much more tuned into this.
Yeah.
But I have also a sense that some of us have found convenience in being away from workplaces, and in the benefits of that convenience, we may be losing some of the beauty of being together with other human beings and that sort of
Yeah.
face-to-face connection. How have you managed to get that balance right in your own work and organization between virtual flexibility and in-person togetherness?
Well, it's interesting actually because at Happy we aren't often in together. In fact, even before the pandemic, we weren't off that often in together. We do have a Happy Day, every 6 months. But that obviously, that wouldn't possibly help for that person. I generally go into the office. Well, I'm actually out in Somerset now. I used to be in London, but I generally go into the office probably only every fortnight actually. But I think people I mean, I tried to get people to work maybe even 1 day a week, but they didn't seem to go for it. So they're fairly happy on their own actually.
Sam has asked, what would be the number one thing that you would do to make a team embrace a happy and positive work culture? If you had to pick the number one recommendation for a team,
I'm gonna pick three.
please.
Okay, so for number one, play to your strengths. Number two, be trusted. And number three, have managers as coaches.
Thank you. That's a really nice summary of three of the big points you've already covered.
Yeah.
But Gus, Carmen, I think it is, has just asked a related question. If so much is riding on the managers, then how do we get rid of bad managers? I guess if someone is in a situation where they feel that their manager isn't bringing out the best in them, is there a way that you found of helping to shift that?
There's a couple of things that I think that, I mean, first of all, talking about freedom within guidelines, if you can talk to them about that. There was one public sector organisation which had a small group of people, no managers, a small group of people who brought me in and got me to talk to senior leaders, and that did work quite well. There was there's another person who was actually a manager, but went to his finance director and said, I want to create a happy workplace. I want to create, a really glorious workplace. And the finance manager said, why would I want that? Why would I want that? What I want is A, B, and C, these key KPIs. And so the guy said, so if I can get you A, B, and C, would I be able to create a happy workplace? And the finance manager said, yes, fine. You can do anything you like as long as you get A, B, and C.
Yeah, so if you're with someone who doesn't value the happiness and the positivity, you can help show them that they could still get the things they do value.
Yes.
Not just as well as, but perhaps even more, because in a happy, positive culture, you're more likely to get the outcomes that the finance manager wants rather than less.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
That's a really nice point. I'm going to have to address the top two questions here in the list.
Okay, what are they?
Well, I'll read them both out. They're from Katie and Gemma. They're basically going back to this point about what can we do as individuals. And I'll read them out because they're slightly different takes on it. But how do we improve the workplace culture and happiness from the bottom up as someone on the lowest rung? Really good question, Katie. Thank you. And Gemma, how can you improve happiness in the workplace without being a manager? So I think they're both playing to this idea that we may not be able to change the culture. What can we do? So you said play to strengths. What else can, and be kind? What else can we do?
Well, I think you can get together and group with other people, and well, it's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting. I would, yeah, I would suggest that that yeah, you get together with people, and if the manager is then still so toxic, um, it's an interesting question.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think it actually what I would say is it comes back to wider points that we cover with Action for Happiness outside of a workplace context, which is this idea that um, the attitude you can't change the circumstances sometimes, but you can choose how you respond to it. So we can choose to let go of people who are treating us badly. We can
Yeah.
choose to focus on what's good in the situation or look for the good in others. We can encourage others. We can show appreciation. We can actually give ourselves praise even if others are not doing it. So we can sort of try and create in our own little minds and psychological spaces that sense of safety and appreciation that we wished we were getting from others.
Yeah.
So I think the
And
10 keys to
could
happier
people
living
put
and
into
other.
chat if they feel they have enabled a better culture in their organization from the top down?
Yeah, sure. So let's hear some examples of how have you helped create a happier culture in your, wherever you are in your organization. And I'll just read a few of these out. So listen to your colleagues, take time out for peer support, value others, put appreciation at the top of team meetings, share my vision and lead by example, try to appreciate someone daily, being positive, organizing events, bringing snacks for colleagues, make
Yeah.
tea, humor, valuing those who are at the bottom of the pecking order, buying pizzas, being an Action for Happiness champion. Thank you so much. That's Sally Ann. Coffee, stickers,
Yeah.
um, health and well-being as an item on the agenda, celebrating people's promotion, supportive groups. I love these. These are really creative and really authentic as well. Giving my boss a swimming ticket has me feeling intrigued. I'm not
Yes.
sure quite what that means, but every fortnight we stop for cake and chill. So I
Yeah.
can see lovely examples here of people
Ika,
being
yeah.
warm-hearted, good people, and just trying to make the others around them feel
Yeah.
good. And that
And
seems.
we talk about managers as multipliers. Managers can either be diminishers or multipliers, but also frontline staff can also do that. Can also be a multiplier. Can also listen to people. Can show appreciation. Can make people feel good about themselves. That works very well.
Yeah. So the multiplier idea is that you take something constructive and you try and spread it. Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, the Multipliers is a book by Liz Wiseman, and it's about how managers multiply people's fulfillment and so forth. But it can also, as I say, be done for frontline staff. So for instance, if you're in a meeting, don't talk too much. Just give an equal voice for people. These kinds of things.
Mm. Mary's asked a really interesting question in connection with moving jobs. So, do you have any advice on how to search for or find a job that has a really great culture? Often I find that the hiring team might say the right thing in interviews, but the actual culture is anything but what was said. How do you find the truth and find a good job with a happy work culture? Great question, Mary.
Well, they are some best place to work lists. They are some things like that. There's the Sunday Times best place to work. There's the place to work list as well. There's the glass. You could look at Glassdoor.
So other people's feedback is helpful, I guess, because you're getting the wisdom of the crowd and people's
Absolutely.
experience. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. I find that we like to do this both ways around. So if we're trying to bring someone into a team, you want to sort of try out working with them, so, and see how it is to sort of collaborate with someone, and
Yeah.
equally give them a chance to sort of see what it feels like. So we have a sort of check in and check out process that we do at the start of our meetings, and we do that as part of the interview process and give people a chance to feel what it feels like to be in an Action for Happiness meeting, and
Hmm.
so that they sort of experience that right from the start.
That sounds good.
Yeah. Someone whose name here is Moto G. I'm not sure that's their actual name, but that's the username showing up. What do you do when you're dealing with someone who can be dominating or toxic at work? Should we kill them with kindness? You talked about kindness, and I think it's a great question, and of course, kindness is great. But I wonder if something around boundaries is important here as well. How do we find that balance between trying to respond positively versus saying to a boss, that's not acceptable, I don't want to be treated that way? How do you navigate that
No,
dilemma?
that's with the boss, is it?
Yeah, that's when you've got to well, actually, no, to be fair, sorry, the question is actually generally about a dominating or toxic person. It doesn't necessarily mean it's your line manager. So how do we find that balance between kindness and, I guess, psychological safety, maybe?
Yeah, well, yes, I mean, you should definitely have a psychologically safe workplace. I would, so I'm yes. I don't know. What do people feel about that one? About the about a toxic guy in the room?
Yeah, okay. Let's hear some wisdom from the audience then.
Yeah,
Sometimes the best answer is just to move on. People do, obviously leave
yeah.
work environments that are difficult.
I mean, yes, people leave. People definitely leave their managers.
Yeah, calling out the behavior. You can't really change how let's say a narcissist person would behave. You can just change how you respond to them. You speak up. You set boundaries. I'm just reading these out. Don't take things
Yeah,
personally. Spend more time with the other people who are not toxic.
yeah.
Um, you know, let it go. Recognize
Marry
that they may
them, they
not be
say.
aware of what they're doing. So I think that's a really, really wise set of answers. There's a mixture, I think, of both calling it out and standing up for boundaries, but also trying to not let it overwhelm you and bring you down. That seems very wise to me. Thank you. Thank you, community, for your wisdom.
Absolutely.
Colette says, any tips on how to be happy at work when you're a sole trader, self-employed, or work from home most of the time? So you're not with all these wonderful people. You're kind of spending a lot of time by yourself.
Well, that was me 36 years ago. It wasn't it was possibly 3 years, 4 years before I got my first person. And I, I'm fairly positive, I think. But you can get together with groups of people. I chatted with trainers at that time. I chatted with some other folk at that time. So, I think you can get in a group of people.
Mm. I think that getting together is a really great idea. Gali, if I've pronounced that correctly, has just asked a point about the health service. I think you mentioned before you've done work with public sector
We
organisations
have
in
done work with
the
the health
sector.
service, yeah.
How do you improve morale or make colleagues happier in the NHS? For those who are international, that's the UK's health service. When we're dealing with patients for the whole shift, non-stop, without breaks, apart from a short lunch, we don't even really speak to colleagues. It's non-stop. I mean, I think lots of us, even those of us like me who are outside of that NHS environment, are aware that there's so many people doing incredibly important life-saving work under huge
Yeah.
pressure. What have you seen that can work in that kind of context?
Um, what have I seen that can work in that kind of context? Basically, be appreciative. Like I've said before, be appreciative, be kind, be helpful with your colleagues.
Mm.
Because that's all I can say really. But again, maybe in the chat there might be some other people that say something.
Yeah, please feel free to share other responses. And thank you for the question. So my colleague Vanessa, who I mentioned earlier, who when we deliver work with Action for Happiness for organizations, gives a lovely example about I think what she calls micro interactions. And there's research that shows the tiny connections we have, Henry, with each other, the smile, as you said earlier, the thank you, the making eye contact, recognize, appreciating and making sort of noticing and seeing someone maybe in a different part of the organization, they feel like tiny little throwaway moments, but actually they're one of the biggest predictors of whether or not somebody has a good day at work. And
Yes.
so actually we forget that these tiny moments of
Yeah.
connection
Absolutely.
and time and appreciation they're not just a nice to have, they are the kind of bedrock of feeling like you're part of something meaningful, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We're rapidly running out of time, Henry, and I want to
Oh,
just leave time to wrap up. Obviously, I mean, I've mentioned that Action for Happiness does offer some support for people working on happiness in organizations. You, as well as these great books, do
yeah.
offer training, and I think we're going to send in the follow-up email tomorrow links to both more information about Happy's training in case anyone would like to
Yeah.
recommend this to their organization. Also, I think people can book a slot with you to chat about that if they would like to
Yeah,
find out.
they can do that.
There's a
Yeah.
link to your calendar, and then we'll send access to these two fantastic books that you've
Yeah.
mentioned. So I guess all it leaves me to say is, folks, thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this incredibly interactive session, everyone. And I think we're all here because we care about the idea that this thing we spend so much of our lives doing, work, I think it's only second to sleep in the whole of our lifetimes that we spend time on. It really matters that it matters not just because of how we feel and how we help others feel. And it's, as you said at the start, it's life-saving. So, Henry, I'm incredibly grateful for the impact your work has had on Action for Happiness and me personally. And I wanted to thank you for your time today, but also hand back to you for a sort of final thought. If you wanted to wrap up what we've talked about, what would be your takeaways for us all as we part today?
I would say give people the trust that they deserve. Give people trust and freedom where they make their own decisions. And I mean, it's difficult in a toxic environment. It's difficult in a toxic culture. But what I want is for a happy workplace to be the norm and not the exception. And so, yeah, that's what we're driving towards. That's what we're looking for to create happier workplaces.
A happy workplace can be the norm rather than the exception. I think
Yeah,
if that was the case, that would lead to so many benefits for wider society, and it would help all of
absolutely.
us feel better about our lives. And I just wanted to reiterate, what's that phrase you say? People work best.
When they feel good about themselves.
People work best when they feel good about themselves. Well, you've helped me feel good about myself, not only in this event, but also through the advice you've been providing me and us for many years. And I think I can see in the chat there's a lot of appreciation for how you've helped all of us feel about the importance of this topic today, Henry. Folks, please do take a chance to share the video from this event, to pass on some of these insights to your friends and colleagues, and do check out the links that we'll be sending tomorrow. Henry, thank you for your time. Thank you for your work, and keep up the
Thank you.
inspiring work.
Excellent.
Good to see you all. See you soon.